I think we're going to get started. So I just wanted to welcome you to tonight's webinar, Planning for the Future with Spina Bifida. My name is Rachel Gallant, and I am ISBA's clinical program designer and an occupational therapist by background. I will be facilitating tonight's presentation. Before we begin, I want to go over some housekeeping notes. We are recording tonight's presentation to be viewed on demand, and we'll be sending the link to view to all who have registered for tonight's webinar. We'll also make the recording available on our website later on. We encourage questions throughout the presentation by putting your questions in the Q&A box as they come up. If you would like to remain anonymous with your question, please check the anonymous box before posting it. We will try to answer these in real time and verbally so that they are captured in the recording. If there are any questions we do not get to, we will make sure to send those answers out via email, as we want to make sure everyone's voices are heard. The chat is disabled for attendees, but we may be sending notices out during the presentation through the chat, so just keep an eye on that too. Thank you all for attending tonight's presentation, and we really appreciate your participation and attention to this topic. Finally, a survey should appear in your browser when the webinar is ended. Please complete that as your feedback is really important to us. So right now, I'd like to turn your attention to our presenters this evening. First, we have Robert B.T. Treeweiler. BT has worked with the Illinois Spina Bifida Association for the last 3 years as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and he's been in the field for 40 years. Chris Murphy. Chris leads our weekly group for adults with spina bifida. And finally, Megan Lenhart. Megan is a member of the ISBA community and on the ISBA Advocacy Committee. And now I'll turn it over to them so that they can share their wisdom with you.
Hi, I'm BT. Tonight we're going to be talking about making future plans. And we're each going to take turns talking about stuff. We do encourage, if you have questions while we're talking, please submit them through the Q&A box. We'll try to answer them while we're doing the presentation, so we can give you information that you are really interested in. Next slide, please. Next. There we go. So the topic areas we're going to cover: advocating, making plans during the high school years, after high school, and then when the parents are gone. Next slide. So making plans, everybody's plans are very unique and specific to them. Tonight, we're just going to talk about areas that, are probably good to look at for planning, but everybody makes their own decision. Though I do encourage people, when you make a plan, it's better to do it as a group. That means talking with family, friends, parents, aunts, uncles. It's much better to plan as a group than to make plans like individually, though a lot of people do make individual plans. But the important thing is just to sit down, either by yourself or with others, and talk about the future and what you would like to achieve. Another important thing about planning is advocating for yourself, and Megan's going to talk on that.
Hi, everyone. So I think a really important topic for someone who has spina bifida is advocating for yourself. I know that when I was a child, my parents did a lot of that. They cared for me, they advocated for me. And it wasn't until my freshman year, first semester in college, where I got a bone infection while I was at college. And overnight, I started my crash course on advocating for myself. My parents were very supportive and helpful, but they could not be at college with me for the months of recovery that I was going to have to undergo for this. And so I had to learn to get to and from class by myself, bathe myself, take care of myself, and lean on my teachers and my friends at school to help me get through it. And I remember looking at my best friend saying, okay, I need to make sure that I learn everything I can about this so that I can try and help prevent this from happening again. And if it does, I know how to take care of myself. So that was just an experience that I had with advocating for myself.
Another important part of planning is executive functioning. That's when executive function is planning, focusing your attention, juggling, multitasking. That's all involved in planning. And if for any reason you don't think you're well equipped at executive functioning or need any help, the Illinois Spina Bifida Association does offer free executive functioning coaching. So that is available through ISBA. There's no charge for the service. Just get in touch with Matt Larson, the executive director, and say you're interested in getting some executive functioning coaching, because that can also help you tremendously with making and carrying out plans. Next slide. So when you do planning, you rely a lot upon resources, or you should be looking at resources. And there's lots of resources. I mean, a month doesn't go by when I don't come across a new resource for something. And I've been doing this, like Rachel said, for many years. One of the best resources is the Illinois Spina Bifida Association. Their website lists all kinds of links to resources and information. Another good resource is the National Spina Bifida Association. Then there's resources with the federal government, state governments, your local community, public schools, colleges. They all have resources that you can benefit from and take advantage of. And generally, they don't cost anything. Generally, these resources, this information is free. You just have to access it. And, if, after the webinar, you're thinking, oh, yeah, that good looking guy said something about, federal resources, but I don't remember. Please follow up, contact us. We're here to help. And that's the reason we do this, is to point people in the right direction. Next slide, please. So our first major area is like planning during high school. And that would be like for education, driving, vocational, financial. Next slide. Educationally in high school, if you need assistance, there, you can request a 504 plan. That's basically giving you accommodations for participating in your classroom and school activities. 504 plans do not involve in changing the instructional curriculum. They're more like accessibility accommodations. If you need help with, learning, talk to the school about an IEP. The individual education programs are set up to help students who need assistance with learning. Both of these things you can request through the school administration. They're available at all schools in Illinois. Another thing during the high school years, you want to think about making plans if you want to go to college. Not everybody goes to college or wants to go to college. But if you're in high school and it's a possibility for you, you want to start making plans in your junior year, if possible, of high school. You want to talk with your school guidance counselor. That's another resource that's available to you. All schools have guidance counselors. Take advantage of that. Talk to them. If you're thinking of going to college, visit college campuses, if possible. Apply for federal student financial aid. learn the resources that are available. And your school is really a great place to help you if you're thinking of college. And you don't have to be sure, even if you're just toying with the idea. Next slide, please. Another big issue in high school is driving. And Megan is going to talk about that.
So driving is a big source of independence. It was not the easiest thing for me. I have to use hand controls like many of us probably have to use, and it was a kind of a difficult system for me to navigate, especially going through um, my high school program. And so, in addition to doing the high school program, I took a couple other steps to do outside programs that could maybe help me. And then I finally ended up at Marion Joy. I don't know if some of you have heard of it. It's a rehabilitation center. And they were really helpful to me navigating, learning how to drive, because for me, it was a really big step in getting independent. And it also helped me further like advocate for myself. I'm like, okay, this is not working for me in the high school environment. Where can I get what I need and who can help me get that? And I feel like those are a couple questions I still ask myself a lot, pretty much every day. If I need something, if I need to advocate for myself, I say, what do I need? Where can I find it? And who can help me get it? And Marion Joy was that for me. It took 3 tries. I went through 3 different programs, but I finally got my license and it opened up a whole new world for me.
I can just jump
Chris,
in.
do you have anything to add? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I also drive as well. I use hand controls as well, and I actually took the classroom part of driver's ed through Excel driving school. So it was a private driving school that wasn't through my high school. And then I went to Marion Joy as well for the actual on road lessons. And I believe my school district helped to pay for the Marion Joy lessons. So you just have to if you're gonna go through Marion Joy and things, you have to make sure you work with your school to make sure that they can help pay for the lessons. So it's not all on you or your family. Yeah.
We do have a question. I think this is for Megan. Where and how did you find out to get hand controls for your car?
I don't remember who told me, but the entity that I used then and I still use all these years later is called Mobility Works. There's one in Plainfield and they have a few other locations, and they've always been helpful to me. And I think they also have other services at their locations, like getting like a ramp for like the back of your car if you need that installed. And they installed that in my car, and I've used them since. If I've had like issues with my hand controls not working correctly, I've taken it there and they've been really great. So yeah.
I can jump in about that as well. I've also got some Mobility Works. I've been going there with my family for a number of years. We had a full size van years ago that had a lift in it, and then we had a minivan that had like a lift seat that I could use. And now I have my own car. I have a Kia Soul that has a ramp in the back, and it also has hand controls as well. And as far as getting my hand controls in my car, when I was taking driver's ed at Marion Joy, the instructor from there actually met me and my parents at Mobility Works and worked with the people there to let them know, what I had used for my driving lessons at Marion Joy and what I needed as far as hand controls went.
I want to just follow up and mention that if you're thinking about driving, or if you're able to drive, the best time to do this is while you're still in high school. That's because your school is obligated to provide you with the classroom instruction, and they're obligated to provide the behind the wheel training. If you wait till after you graduate, you're going to pay for all this on your own. If you do it during your time in high school, it's the school's responsibility to pay for, the classroom instruction, the behind the wheel instruction. So let your school know that you're thinking of driving. Get your driver's permit from the Secretary of State's office and take your high school driver's education class. And do not accept no for an answer. As Megan would say, advocate for yourself, because you are entitled, for driver's education like any other student. Next slide.
One more question before we move on.
Oh.
Somebody was asking if Marion Joy is a company that just helps with driving, or does it help in other areas?
Marion Joy is a rehabilitation hospital. They provide physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language therapy. They have both inpatient and outpatient services. They're located in Wheaton, Illinois. That is not the only place that offers driving evaluation and driving lessons for people with disabilities. There are other places in the state. The ISBA website has a list of places where you can get driver's services. So, and we'd work with you to find the place that's closest to you. Next slide. Another thing when you're in high school is vocational, or, just thinking about a job. One of the programs offered at school is a STEP program. That's a secondary transitional experience program. That's why they call it STEP. It's a long name. It's with the Illinois Division of Rehabilitation Services, and that exposes students to work experiences and some career counseling. By the way, the Illinois Division of Rehab Services can also fund for the driving evaluations and hand controls if you're looking, because you're going to need those for work in the future. Take advantage of career counseling when you're in high school. Talk to your school guidance counselor. You can also talk to vocational rehab counselors like myself. Through ISBA, I work with some high school students. I don't try to take the place of a high school guidance counselor, but I will also talk with them. If you can get a part-time job, plan on trying to get a part-time job. If you can't or don't want to get a part-time job, another thing to look at would be volunteering. And Chris was going to talk a bit about the volunteering experience.
Yes. So
next slide.
Yeah. So I've done a fair amount of volunteering over the years, before high school and during high school, and even more recently. I've done some volunteering with ISBA over the years, and I've also volunteered with an organization called Feed My Starving Children. I think that's a great thing to do. It can help develop teamwork skills and help you learn to be on time. And it also just feels really good to help out with things and be part of the community and support other people and things like that. It doesn't affect any government benefits, which is a great thing. It can be used on your resume and things, and you can get references for future jobs as well, which is great.
Next slide. There are many places to volunteer. Really any nonprofit organization or government agency can use volunteers. Very commonplace are food pantries, animal shelters, zoos. We have a member of the ISBA community right now who's volunteering at a zoo in the area. Churches use volunteers, park districts, forest preserves, hospitals, museums. I've had people volunteer in numerous places. Megan or Chris, any other suggestions you have for the list? Okay.
I think you
Well,
covered most of them.
okay, thanks. But as Chris said, volunteering, I mean, it gets you in the community. It's great, for preparing for future employment. Plus, you're going to meet people. You're going to have fun. I mean, our person who volunteers at the zoo, I mean, she's learning all about different types of animals and their care of animals. You know, being a zoo person myself, I think it's fascinating. So, next slide.
And Charlotte from the audience sent us a message that she is volunteering in the zoo, so that's great.
Next slide. Another thing to start thinking of in high school is financial stuff. You know, you know, high school is kind of preparing students to become adults. Um, and you need to start thinking of the future financially. Now, while you're in high school, you can get supplemental security income benefits through the Social Security Administration. Not everybody wants to do that, but just so you're aware that you can get SSI benefits for the age of 18. And those benefits can help pay for things like car or future education. Another thing you might think of is setting up an ABLE account. And we're going to go into a little more detail on the next slide on that one, but I just want to introduce that. And then the third thing is get a checking account. High school is a great place to start to learn how to manage money. Open a checking account. They don't cost anything to open. You know, I got one when I was a senior in high school. It's a good way just to learn how to handle some checking and handle a debit card. Chris and Megan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've had a checking account for several years, and it's been a great way to learn some money management skills. I also used to receive SSI for several years. I don't anymore, but I did in high school and part of college as well. And then I've also had an ABLE account for several years, which I can talk about on the next slide.
Yeah. We'll go right into it. Great segue. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So with ABLE accounts, like I said, I've had an ABLE account for several years. I think it's a great way to be able to save money and not be taxed on what you earn on your savings. And I've used it for several things. I used it to pay for modifications on my car a few years ago, and then I've used it to pay for other medical bills and things. And it's a great thing to have if it's something you're able to look into.
Next slide. This is just some general information about like ABLE account withdrawals. The one thing with ABLE account is, there's only certain areas you can use the money for, which that's a lot, and I've listed them here. But if you want to go out and buy a new Game Boy, you shouldn't be taking it out of your ABLE account. That's why you have a separate checking account. It's to buy the Game Boy or whatever. So, but ABLE accounts are an excellent idea. Once again, the ISBA website has a link to much more information on ABLE accounts, and we're happy to answer questions about them. But it's something to look at, and to plan for. And the best time, in my opinion, to do that is during the high school years. Any other thoughts, Chris or Megan?
This
Nope.
was interesting for me. Before talking to you and Chris, I had never heard of an ABLE account. So you're always learning new things. I had never
Yeah.
heard of this, so this is something I can look into. So it was great information, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Next slide.
We do have a question.
Oh.
Can you use ABLE accounts for physical therapy or doctor's appointments, bills?
Yes, health and wellness. anything, yeah, definitely you could help pay for those bills.
Great.
Our next major area, we're going to talk about, making plans after high school. So high school can be a busy time, but even after you graduate, there's a lot of areas that, you want to look at making plans on. Next slide. And the first is maybe going to college, and Chris was going to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I did end up going to college after high school. I myself went to community college for 2 years. I went to College of DuPage. I got some general education classes out of the way there, and then I transferred to Benedictine University in Lisle, and finished up my accounting degree. Um, I thought it was a great experience. I did have to figure out my academic accommodations for my classes. I had to go for um, neuropsychological evaluations. I think twice throughout my college career, I had to go for that. Every so often, you have to get that redone to keep your accommodations in school. Um, so it's important to get that figured out if you need to. There are no IEPs in college. And then if your parents want to talk with your college about you, they need to get permission from the school, or actually from you, not from the school. They need to get permission from you to do that. And yeah, that's basically what I have on that.
Any thoughts on your end, Megan?
I think it's a great experience as well. I went to college, and when you visit different colleges, it's really good to see what they can offer you. The first college I looked at was Illinois State University because they were known for teaching. And when I went there, they were great. They were willing to really accommodate me. But in the end, I decided that was not the school for me because of how big the school was for me physically. It was going to be, they were willing to accommodate me physically to get to and from classes. But for me personally, it was just going to be too much for me. So I decided on a smaller 2-year school. And then I went on to a smaller private 4-year school. And that was the right fit for me. I think when like when you go, you get a feel
Yeah.
for what's right for you.
Yeah, if I can jump back in on that, I agree that you know uh you know but when you know when you find the right school for you, you can tell that it's the right one for you. I consider North Central College, which is very close to me, but their campus is more spread out, and it was going to be harder to get around their campus. But Benedictine is a much more compact campus, and it was much easier to get around. So that was a great fit for me.
Chris, we have a question for you. When did the college request a neuropsych eval that you mentioned about?
Um, when did they request that? I think I had it done either before I started at COD, College of DuPage, or shortly after I started there. I think it was before. I think it was during high school. And, I had testing done throughout my, uh, I believe, elementary school and high school years as well. And so I got it redone either during high school or just after high school. And then I had to have it done again. I think once I was at Benedictine. Um, Again, I believe that you have to have it redone every so years or every so many years. I'm not sure how often it is. Um, Let me see. What was the question again exactly?
Well, they were just asking when did the college actually request that you get the neuropsych eval?
I believe they did when I started to look into COD. I believe they did request it. Yes.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
And do you know how did you have to fund those evaluations yourself, or did the college
I
fund that for you?
believe I had to pay for that. We had to pay for that ourselves. I had to
Okay.
see with my parents, but I believe that's correct.
Now,
Thank you.
sometimes funding can be available through the Illinois Division of Rehabilitation Services. Um, that's the reason why having an open case with DRS can be beneficial, because they can pay for things like neuropsychological evaluation. They can also help pay for college, and where other student financial aid may not be available. Also, I want to mention, we talk about college, but not everybody goes to college. College isn't for everybody. There are good skill training programs out there. If you don't want college, you want something more hands-on, look into a skill training program. My only caution is make sure it's a reputable program. There are places that'll love to take your money, but they're not going to give you the quality or the license or certification that you need. So please check programs out. If you have questions, I am happy to assist you. I don't know every skill training program there is in Illinois, but I know how to check and verify programs. And I've helped people get into skill training before. And it can be highly successful. I've had people become barbers. Somebody right now is in beauty school. So it's something to look at as an alternative. And once again, the Illinois Division of Rehabilitation Services can help pay for your skill training. Next slide.
One more question, BT.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you, everyone. I'm really loving the participation from everyone. We have a question that we're looking at Department of Rehab Services for junior college for the first 2 years. How can school be paid for junior and senior years? Any tips? And does having Medicaid qualify you for some funding?
Well, I mean, the Division of Rehab Services is hoping to pay for the community college for the first 2 years.
Yes, that's what they're
Yeah.
looking into.
Then they can also go on to help pay for, if you want to go to a 4-year university, they could also pay for that junior and senior year. It would depend on what, degree you're looking toward. If you told them you just want an associate's degree, then they'll pay for, your freshman and sophomore year at a community college. If you decide that you want to get a bachelor's degree, then you need to talk with your counselor at DRS about changing your goal, and then they can assist you at a 4-year college just like they assisted you at a community college. And what was the second part of the question, Rachel? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Just that how can school be paid for junior and senior years, and does having Medicaid qualify you for some funding as well?
Now, Medicaid just would mean that you've been established to have a disability, and the Division of Rehab Services could use that information because they provide services to people who have disabilities. So it would just make it maybe a little easier to open a case with them, but there's no special funding through Medicaid.
And just a follow-up to that, her understanding is that the parents' finances do not affect the junior college, but for junior and senior years, parents' income is used. Is that correct?
No, I've never heard that. No,
Oh, okay.
no. It's generally once you turn 18, you're considered an adult. And for federal student financial aid, they might ask about parent income, but once again, the funding, the financial aid you get for your freshman and sophomore at a community college should be the same as your junior and senior year at a 4-year college.
Okay. Thank you for debunking the myths.
If I
And
can just,
then also for Chris, the evaluation that you had talked about, someone was asking, what did the neuropsych evaluation help you achieve, like accommodation wise?
yes, that helped me. I was at, I was able to get, extended time on tests, because it took me longer to finish my tests and things in classes. And so in order to get that kind of accommodation, I had to have testing, have the neuropsych testing done, and had to have a report done to get that type of accommodation for my classes.
Great. Thank you.
Next slide.
1 second. Oops. Did I just move backwards?
No, you're good.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
So after high school, and this is whether you go to college or not go to college, but you want to think about getting a job. Once again, not everybody needs to get a job, but most people do work, and there's no reason why you can't have a job. Um, just talk to Chris and Megan about that. They can tell you about that. But identify what you want to do. You want to work full time, part time? Do you want to work for yourself? Starting your own business. There are people that start their own businesses. I know a couple through the Spina Bifida Association who started their own businesses. In fact, there's a professor at the University of Illinois Chicago who's doing research on people with disabilities who start their own businesses. Look to create a resume. Come up with a job search plan. If you're going to need an accommodation, figure out what that is. Identify it ahead of time. Chris and Megan, anything on this part of the slide you want to jump in on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Resources, for looking or finding a job. Once again, the Illinois Division of Rehabilitation Services, that's their focus, is to get jobs for people who have disabilities. Also, there's vocational rehabilitation counseling. That's what I do, and we provide my service free of charge through the ISBA. You can also use the Social Security's Ticket to Work program as a resource. Next slide. Now, if you do work and get a job, you have to be aware that if you earn money, it could affect government benefits. It can affect SSI, SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance. It can have an effect on your Medicaid if you're in HUD housing. Each of these programs have different criteria. And if you get a government assistance program, you want to check. Most of them allow you to earn money, but you have to be aware of how that could impact the benefits or what would trigger you losing the benefit. That's something that, I work often with people on helping them to understand that. But you need to be aware of that. And could we have the next slide? Rachel, I'll get into a little more. So if you get Social Security benefits and want to get a job, one of the best things to do is to call the Social Security's Ticket to Work program. I've got the number up there. Just be aware that for supplemental security income, you're allowed to earn a whole $85 a month before they start, taking money away from your monthly check. And they would reduce your monthly check by $1 for every $2 you earn over $85. And you also have to be aware that if you have more than $2,000 in a savings account or checking account, then that could consider you not entitled to SSI, since that's a financial aid program. This is where ABLE accounts protect that money, and why it can be so important to have an ABLE account if you're on SSI and you're looking to even work part-time. Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, it's also administered by the Social Security Administration, but it's a totally different program. There they have a 9-month trial work period. And people, can work as long as they don't earn over basically $1,500 a month. They can still get their full SSDI check. Hey, I know this is just very brief, and I'm very willing to go in more details with somebody one-on-one, or you can call the Ticket to Work program at the number I've listed, and they can help you with information. And the Ticket to Work program is actually run by the Social Security Administration. Next slide. So one of the things you want to look at doing is making plans for ongoing health care. And when you transition into becoming an adult, you may have to look at, getting your own health insurance, setting up regular physician visits, what, paying for or acquiring mobility aids, staying healthy, exercise, fitness, participating in adaptive sports, checking out what's available, taking exercise or fitness classes, being involved in the local park district. And I think both Chris and Megan, you guys do outside fitness and exercise programs, correct?
Yes.
I used to play wheelchair basketball. I don't play anymore, but I used to for several years. And then I have a hand cycle that I use to get some exercise, and then I lift weights at home. And then there are a few different adaptive exercise classes online that I join. There's an organization called Dare to Try that does weekly virtual classes, and I join those quite a bit. There's also an organization called GLAZA that does weekly classes as well online.
And Megan, you're very involved in physical fitness.
Yeah, I work out with a strength and conditioning coach, and it's been really beneficial to me and fun. And I also think it's important to have a good medical team on the other side of that, like to build a good team of physicians that you can go to for your different medical needs. And it can take quite a while to do that, but I think that it's a really good investment to do that so that you have good medical care in addition to taking care of yourself, doing physical fitness activities.
Okay. Next slide. Another thing to look at after you've graduated high school is, are you going to, where are you going to live? Do you want to stay living with your parents? Do you want to live on your own? Get an apartment? There's subsidized housing for people with disabilities through the Annexer Center. Just this is once again a good conversation to have with your parents, your other family members, is to talk about, well, where do you want to live? Will you need a personal care attendant? To help to assist you. If you live on your own, do you need someone to come in and help you with some daily living activities? A good resource for that is the Centers for Independent Living, which are throughout the state of Illinois. And I put up a link there to their website. Centers for Independent Living are organizations, created and staffed by people with disabilities. And this is another great resource, especially for independent living. Also, if you haven't already, you want to learn how to manage your finances, make a budget, because if you live on your own, you got to pay the rent, pay the utility bills, buy the groceries, all those wonderful things that, your parents may have done for you. But now if you're on your own, you may be doing yourself. Uh, any extra thoughts on that, Chris or Megan?
Something that has been helpful to me, some of you may know about it, is a company called 180 Medical. It's where I get my catheters from, and they provide financial help because it adds up. It can be pretty expensive, but they've helped me with that.
Next slide. Another thing you want to look at is travel. And both Chris and Megan are going to share some of their insight into traveling with a disability.
Do you want to go ahead? Go ahead, Megan.
Sure. Actually, I just recently took my first trip international to Mexico, which was a bigger stepping stone for me. I've done just local traveling before. I think traveling with, a chronic health condition, or a disability, you have to think about things that maybe the average person doesn't have to think about. Making sure, like I started weeks in advance of going on this trip. I had to make sure I had all my medication, all my medical supplies, backup medication if something happened. And then while I was on the trip, something that I did that was helpful to me was I wanted to be able to enjoy my trip, but I also knew that I needed to take time to rest and do things like that so that I could get the full benefit of my trip. And those were just some things that I did that helped me have a successful trip.
And I've also done quite a bit of traveling. I haven't done any on my own, but I've traveled with my family quite a bit. It does definitely take some extra planning, especially if you're going to fly somewhere. You have to figure out, or really for any trip, you have to figure out, what equipment and supplies you need to bring with you. Um, Actually, on my most recent trip, it was a bit of a longer trip that I took with my parents. One extra thing that I did was I took an extra medicine with me um, uh, that I used, and I was able to use that throughout my trip to help prevent UTIs because I tend to get UTIs a lot when I travel. So it was very helpful and useful to have that with me to help prevent that. But I think it's great to travel if you're able to. It's a lot of fun and it can be a great experience. So I think it's great to at least try to travel if you can.
I have a question for you both, Chris and Megan, if you don't mind. Um, for being in the airport, did you use any special services to get from one place to another or to your gate? And were there any issues you came up against just on the airplane, or tips for flights?
I use, I think pretty much most airports have like wheelchair assistance. Um, and so I use that to get to and from my gate. It just makes it easier for me and gets me there much quicker than I can walk. And then something amazing happened for me on the plane. I personally, and I think a lot of us, like, I can't really use the bathroom on an airplane. It is too small to try and do that. And coming home on the plane, there was a handicap bathroom. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. I'm like, why doesn't every plane have this? They should. It was great. I was like, I find like because then I have to plan my bathroom breaks before I get on the plane, and but I'm like, this is great.
Uh, and for me, I haven't used any assistance to get through airports. I'm pretty independent with pushing my wheelchair, and then my parents are usually able to help me if I need help. As far as on the airplane, it's definitely a struggle to get to the restroom. I've never seen an accessible restroom like Megan apparently did. But it's always really difficult, especially on some pretty recent trips. Luckily, my dad's able to help me, and I've had to use the aisle chair on the airplane to get in the bathroom, but it's quite a bit of a struggle to get in the bathroom and use the bathroom and try to maintain some privacy because I'm not able to close the door when I go in the bathroom. So it's pretty difficult, but I just do what I can. Um, I'm really hoping that there will be some changes with airplanes in the future to make them more accessible.
Thank you both for sharing that. We do have a question, Megan. Do you remember what airline had the accessible bathroom?
United Airlines, shout out to them. I gave them a shout out on social media. I feel like more airlines can do this. I think that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Next slide. Another aspect of independent living we were talking about travel, but just transportation around your local community. Um, you know, if you can drive or thinking about driving, explore that. But also know how to take a public bus, know how to take the train, know how to use Uber, Lyft, taxis, paratransit services. Um, you know, you want to be as independent as you can with your transportation. Um, so, and really, you know, especially now with the Uber and Lyft, there's much more resources for people, you know, to have transportation than, you know, 30, 40 years ago. Um, another area to look at is, you know, just your ongoing medical care, medical insurance, you know, having a physician, having a medical power of attorney if you're over 18. Those are all things to be looking at and considering. Next slide. And then kind of the last area, and this is probably one of the most difficult for people to talk about, is what happens when parents are gone. And that will probably happen. Um, you People need to look at exploring wills and trusts. And I am not an attorney, and I'm not going to give any kind of legal advice, but I think you should talk with an estate attorney. Um, you know, look at having a will, look at having a power of attorney. Um, you know, look into this subject. In fact, we could probably have a whole webinar just on wills and trusts and power of attorneys. But that should be done by an attorney, not by somebody like, you know, the three of us. But really that, you know, people put this off. And, you know, you're probably better to get it done earlier than later. Um, Chris and Megan, do you have any thoughts or comments on this?
Yeah, so I can just say that I do have a living uh, living will that I put together a few years ago, and I also have a power of attorney, and then my parents have a special needs trust that they established for me a few years ago.
Okay. And then, you know, another area is like, once again, when your parents are gone, where will you live? Um, you know, if you haven't already moved out of the house, um, you know, what's going to happen? This is where you really want to be talking with your parents and other family members, you know, discuss living on your own. Would you live with somebody else? Would you need to live in, you know, some type of facility? Um, there are different options, but you need to make plans in advance. I've seen what happens when people don't make plans in advance, and you know, it sometimes is not a very pleasant experience. Or, but you want to put together a support system for after the parents are gone, and you really want to talk with, you know, you, while your parents are still here and other family members, like, you know, would you live with a sibling? Would you live with an aunt and uncle if you want to live with someone? But you need to talk about this ahead of time, you know, not, you know, that's the time to talk about it and make plans for that. And this is something people put off, and it's probably something that you should get done, you know, well in advance. Because like I said, I've seen what happens when people have no plans, and it sometimes does not work out well. So, um, Chris, Megan, any thoughts on this area?
I know over the last couple of years, I've had more discussions with my parents about this, and then I built my will and the power of attorney, so it's been more of a discussion, like an open discussion, and I think that is very good to do.
And that really concludes our webinar. Final slide is just questions, if there are any. But you've asked questions all along, so we really appreciate that. If you think of something afterwards, feel free to reach out to us. If we don't have an answer, we can sure find an answer for you.
Wonderful. Well, we're just getting some thank yous in the Q&A. So I want to thank BT, Chris, and Megan for this great educational session. I know I learned a lot, and thank you for sharing your stories and your experiences with us. And thank you to everyone attending tonight. That was great engagement throughout the whole thing. So thank you so much for attending. And I just want to remind you to fill out the anonymous survey that will pop up in your browser once the webinar ends. We really appreciate your feedback. And like BT said, contact us if you have any questions after this webinar. We're here as a resource for you. So thanks again for everyone attending and our presenters, and have a wonderful night.
Take care.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.